What's up, Nut Gang? Welcome back to another video of American history in a nutshell. So today's topic is going to be the Declaration of Independence, and probably going to be a pretty fun video. We'll read pretty much all the Declaration of Independence. I know a lot of y'all probably have only read or heard the preamble, so it's going to be pretty exciting. Remember to like the video, remember to subscribe or follow on whichever platform you're listening it to. Remember to share it with everyone you know. It could be share it with our very amazing producer C-Rod right there, even though he's already hearing the video and editing too. Share it to your mom, I don't know, to your dog, to your dog's puppies, I don't know, anyone. Doesn't really matter. Doesn't even have to be a real person and a live person. Just anything to get our numbers up. For real, for real. So anyways, let's get into the video. In Congress, July 4th, 1776. The unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America, when in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and nature's God entitle them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impact them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles, and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence, indeed, will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. So this is definitely the most famous part of the Declaration of Independence. I mean, I'm sure you heard it in like history class somewhere, maybe some videos you're watching. These are really like the meat and potatoes of the Declaration of Independence. This is like where everything else after is built upon. Basically, if you ever written an essay, you know that there's like your intro paragraph, your body paragraphs, and then your conclusion. This is sort of like the intro paragraphs. This is where you explain what this document is about and why you're doing it. And basically what they're saying here is the insistence on natural rights. That's probably the main part of what they're talking about, because everything else in those paragraphs derive off that. So if you go back to what they're saying, all men are created equal, that they are endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights. That is what they're talking about, natural rights. Now, these rights we are born with, we're not given them, which means that the founding fathers, they're saying that the purpose of government is to secure these rights. And if the government threatens them, is not only the people's right, but their duty to either destroy the government or change it so that it does actually protect those rights. Now, of course, the government shouldn't just be changed for simple things, but it has to be changed for actually infringing dangerous things. Things like, I don't know, no taxation without representation, putting down the American colonists by sending soldiers into their homes, maybe just some little stuff like that, stuff like the British government has been doing. As Thomas Jefferson, the writer of the Declaration of Independence, says, it was a long train of abuses and usurpation, and because of this long train, it is the duty of the American people to remove the British government from the colonies and to establish new governance. Some context. Alright, so now the list of grievances, which is after the preamble. These won't make too much sense without much context, so I'll give you some. The colonists are declaring independence from the British Empire, but why are they doing it? I mean, you don't want independence just for no reason after all. Surely there must be some reason why they don't want to be governed by the British anymore. Well, there's quite a lot of reasons, but one that's going to be a really good example, and you're probably going to see it throughout a lot of the grievances, is tax acts. So we might have skimmed over these on our videos on the Whiskey Shades Rebellion and the Bill of Rights, and these taxes really do deserve their own video because it's a really big thing, but here's the gist of it. From 1764 to 74, the British decided to levy taxes on the colonists. Why? Because they were broke. If you recall back to the George Washington video, which we did last time, the French and Indian War was a pretty big conflict around this time. And even though the British won it, they were absolutely in debt. Like, I'm talking about, I don't even know how to describe how much in debt they were. They were just massively in debt. And because a lot of the fighting happened in America, the British thought, well, with a lot of the fighting happening there to defend our colonists, then why don't we tax our colonists so they can pay us back for it? You didn't have to cut me off. In 1764, the Sugar Act was passed by Parliament. The tax imports of sugar, wine, molasses, and other such goods, and really cracked down on smuggling. At first, the colonists didn't really express much unrest. A lot of them probably thought it would stop there and just had to take it, but this lack of reaction would really spur on the British to put more taxes on the colonists. In 1765, the Stamp Act was passed, and real unrest started. The Stamp Act taxed newspapers, playing cards, other such prints by mandating that they all have a stamp as a sign of the tax being paid. One of the reasons this tax wasn't popular was that the British Parliament, which sat an entire ocean away, just decided to enact a tax on the colonies, which were an ocean away from the Parliament, without asking for any delegation or any input from the colonies. And a lot of the colonists, which were the ones being affected by the tax, really had no way to influence this decision. And this would really give rise to the phrase, no taxation without representation. I mean, I'm pretty sure y'all know that statement from history class. The Stamp Act was repealed a year later, and the Townshend Acts were imposed in 1767. These gave more power to British troops and basically bribed judges to help the crown. And of course, these acts were incredibly unpopular, and all of them but one were repealed by 1770. So the one act I'm pretty sure everyone either remembers or just the one that people think about when they hear about the tax acts is the Tea Act of 1773. Now, the reason why you'd probably know this one is because of the Boston Tea Party, the Sons of Liberty, everyone knows that one. This act wasn't really about the British Crown, but it was to bail out the British East India Company, which was not in a great place at the time. The Tea Act taxed tea imports and prevented other countries from importing tea. You gotta realize, America was not a coffee country at this time. It was a tea country, just like their British fathers. So, if you're gonna really crack down on tea, well, that's basically declaring war to them. Because of this Tea Act, the Boston Tea Party happened. It's like, we can probably do our own video on that because it's such a significant event, but I digress. And the next year, as a reaction to the Boston Tea Party, the British enacted the Intolerable Acts. They closed Boston Harbor, restricted local governments, increased the British-controlled governor's power, and quartered soldiers into colonies. And if you remember from our Bill of Rights video, quartering is when civilians are required to house and care for soldiers. You can see why something like that was very unpopular. I mean, think about it. This foreign power, which isn't really foreign, but it feels foreign because they attacked you, is making you house and feed and care to foreign soldiers who you really don't like because they were the ones who attacked your home. You might be asking me, why are you telling us about these tax acts? I mean, it doesn't really seem that significant to the Declaration of Independence. Well, as I said earlier, the 27 grievances, a lot of them won't really make much sense until you have a lot of context behind why they feel this way. And one of the best context givers that the Declaration of Independence the Founding Fathers really had was these tax acts. Basically, a common denominator between all these acts is that the colonists, they had no say in them. They had no voice. And that's what really made the colonists angry. I don't really doubt that if they were able to vote on them, that they would have maybe been able to, they probably would have grumbled. Maybe it would have been a couple rebellions, but I don't think it would have gone to the entire scale of the American Revolution. The British decided they wanted to showcase their power over the colonies to really enforce their power, and that really backfired. Now, here's where I get the list of grievances. There's 27 is going to be kind of lengthy. He has refused his assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance, unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained, and was so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend to them. He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people, unless those people will relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records, for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing with manly firmness the invasions on the rights of the people. He has refused for a long time after such dissolutions to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers, incapable of annihilation, have returned to the people at large for their exercise, the state remaining in the meantime exposed to all the dangers of invasions from without and convulsions within. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states, for that purpose obstructing the laws for naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migrations hither, and raising the conditions of new appropriations of lands. He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. He has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount and payment of their salaries. He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. He has kept among us in times of peace standing armies without the consent of our legislatures. He has effected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power. He has combined with others to subject us as to his jurisdiction foreign to our constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation, for quartering large bodies of armed troops among us, for protecting them by a mock trial from punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states, for cutting off a trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us in many cases the benefits of trial by jury, for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses, for abolishing the free system of English laws in a neighboring province, establishing therein an arbitrary government, and enlarging its boundaries so as to render it at once an example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule into these colonies, for taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our governments, for suspending our own legislatures and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burned our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. He is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of his death, desolation, and tyranny, already begun with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages and totally unworthy the head of a civilized nation. He has constrained our fellow citizens taken captive on the high seas to bear arms against their country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hands. He has excited domestic insurrections among us, and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers, the merciless Indian savages whose known rule of warfare is undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. That's all the grievances. Now, some of them aren't really covered by the Tax Act, just like taking away charters, how he's ravaged the coast. Most of these grievances really can be explained with the Tax Acts. And another thing that I'd like to highlight is, this is going a little off script, but I just want to say that these charters, this is another reason of why the Americans felt so slighted by the British for this. So, unlike a lot of colonies which the British directly ruled, these colonies in America were actually made by charters, which means that is basically they were sort of autonomous. They had their own little governments. It's like they submitted to the British Crown. However, they would essentially be their own nation. It's kind of like a little weird, but you just got to think about it as like an autonomous zone, or like a little like states, I guess. Maybe like a little bit of the EU states in a sense. There's not really any way I really know how to describe it, but basically the American colonies didn't really see themselves as British. They saw themselves as like, Marylanders, Massachusetts, Virginians, stuff like that. They saw themselves as like British in like nationality, but like for their own personal classification, they identified it by their states. Now, there's one more part of the Declaration of Independence, the closer, and I actually really like this one. In the stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince, whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant, is unfit to be a ruler of a free people. Nor have we been wanting in attentions to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by the legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our emigration and settlement here. We have appealed to the native justice and magnanimity, and we have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations, which would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence. They too have been deaf to the voice of justice and of consanguinity. We must therefore acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation, and hold them as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace, friends. We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America in General Congress, assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do, in the name and by authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and of right, ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states, they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. That's probably my favorite part of the Declaration of Independence. It's just so dramatic. You hear what they said? That was powerful language. They called King George unfit to rule. It was like a lot of build-up, and then they, in the final paragraph, they finally said they declare independence. It was just awesome. So what are they saying here? You know, I said like a couple of things, but like, what are they really saying? That first paragraph is basically saying that they asked the crown for change and to treat them better very nicely, which, to be fair, they did. In an earlier, like, a couple of years, maybe before, they sent a personal letter to King George III, asking them, you know, can you stop doing all these acts, and can you please just give us a voice in Parliament? King George said no and passed an intolerable acts after, which is why they said that they have not just been ignored but injured by the British Crown. Here they say King George is unfit to rule a nation, a free nation, that he's in fact a tyrant. And he also says that, they also say that earlier in the grievances, where they say that he is totally unworthy the head of a civilized nation. In fact, all the grievances were actually just addressed to King George III, and I find it pretty cool. So the second paragraph says the founding fathers have also told the British people about their plight, you know, tried to appeal to their, you know, justice and their emotions, but that those have fallen on deaf ears, and that because of this, they say that they'll hold the British to the same standards of any other nation, you know, in peace, friends, but in war, enemies. Now, this last paragraph is the climax of the entire document. Basically, everything leading up has just been exposition. This climax of just declaring independence, really, just is a massive, very satisfying payoff. They declare that all political connection to Great Britain, gone. Their allegiance to Great Britain, gone. These new states have the authority to do all the things a nation needs to do, like declare war, government itself, manage its finances, all that. They're saying the British don't have the right to do that anymore, and that the American colonies, it's their job now. Alright, here's everyone's favorite part of the video, fun trivia! Alright, I don't really have much trivia for this. I have like 3 points, but we'll just go into it. So first, the signatures. Now, a lot of people know John Hancock wrote his name really big, like front and center in the middle of the bottom of the Declaration of Independence. Why is it significant, and why were all the other people who signed it significant too? What's really significant about the signing of the Declaration of Independence? Basically, what they were saying is that when the Declaration was sent to the British, they were surrendering their freedoms to the British, and they were now fugitives wanted for treason. And if they were caught, they would be killed. They risked their lives for a chance of America becoming an independent country. And that's real bravery right there. They put their lives in the line for this country, and, well, now we have a country. Another fun trivia point is that this document was influenced by other documents too. Stuff like the English Magna Carta and Thomas Paine. I've talked about the Magna Carta a little in the Bill of Rights video, pretty sure. But it's a 1215 document which restricted central royal power and uplifted the people. Maybe we'll do a whole deep dive on this document too, because it's pretty important to the American philosophy for the founding fathers. And Thomas Paine was the one who really introduced the idea of natural rights to the founding fathers. His pamphlet Common Sense, I think the most read paper in the colonies, it was like a massive thing. And of course, Thomas Paine, being one of the most famous philosophers of his era, was really an influence to the founding fathers. And lastly, this Declaration of Independence has influenced the declarations of independence of many other nations across the world. You know, stuff like Vietnam, Venezuela, Haiti, Czechoslovakia, and more. Another document that was modeled after the Declaration of Independence was the Declaration of Sentiments, which was made during the suffrage movements in the 1900s. And this was a document that basically said that women should have equal rights as men, because they have those natural rights too, and they're being deprived of those rights in the patriarchal society. Basically, this document wasn't only powerful, but influential. In conclusion, the Declaration of Independence is one of the greatest documents ever made. The way the founding fathers were able to display their grievances and showcase their beliefs and declarations of their rights is downright amazing. This striking document that has survived the test of time and will continue to survive the test of time for the foreseeable future. It's an immortal document and is not just something to be looked at, but something to model after. This is American history in a nutshell. See you next time.